It's Reality Check with Craig Price.
I'm an idiot.
4 minutes in and I'm already wrong.
I'm like a monkey. Hello, look at me.
You're like a beautiful mind. I'm more like Forrest Gump. So it's,
Craig Price is the man.
I knew it. Craig, shut up.
it's Reality Check with Craig Price. This week, Amelie Robitaille is here to discuss Cirque du Soleil and their new touring show, Kurios. Welcome to the show. I'm excited to bring this episode to you because we all know Cirque du Soleil and the amazing performances they've done for years. And their latest touring show, Kurios, Cabinets of Curiosities, opened already in New York City in September, and it's touring, so it'll be in Miami, Dallas, and Houston in the coming months. But important to me and some of my listeners, they'll be coming to Houston at the Sam Houston Race Park starting April 6, 2017, and going for the entire month of April. So you can get tickets now for any of the shows, regardless of where you live, New York, Miami, Dallas, or Houston. Go to cirquedusoleil.com/curios. See, when I was presented the opportunity to talk to Amelie about the Cirque, as I like to call it, being on the in crowd, I wanted to go behind the scenes a little bit and see how it is they do what they do. How do they find their folks? What it's like to be part of the Cirque. See, I'm not lying. That's what I like to call it. And I know many of you felt the same, so thank you all who posted questions, and I think I got to all of them. But of course, if I didn't, you can let me know by going to realitycheckpodcast.com/feedback or emailing me direct at craig@speakercraigprice.com. I'll be sure to pass your question along and get that answered for you, because I know they're going to be coming back in April. But right now, let's close our eyes, open our imaginations, maybe stretch out our hammies for good luck, and let's talk Cirque du Soleil with Amelie Robitaille. Now, I've had a chance to see Cirque du Soleil over the years, sometimes in Vegas, also sometimes with the touring company. I saw Robitaille, which was a fantastic show, and then we just saw Love last year in Las Vegas. So when you come up with these shows, as far as like concept, how far in advance does it take from concept to opening night on a show?
Right, so that's a good question because the creation process of a new show at Cirque du Soleil is quite long, surprisingly long. So I would say from the moment we hire a writer-director, which is Michel Laprise in the case of Kurios, it's about 2 years before opening night. What the process is usually, he'll hire some of his designers and creative team members, such as the costume designer, the choreography designer, makeup designers, sets and prop designers, music composers, and they'll start working on the whole storyline and design of the show. And then we will go into the casting of the artists that will be part of the cast. And then about 6 months prior to opening, that's when the artists arrive in our studio in Montreal and they start all the rehearsals, the fittings of their costumes, the training of their makeup. And for 6 months, and then we'll open to the audience, usually always in Montreal when we're talking big top show.
And when you think of, like with Kurios, you've got an opening act, which is unusual. So you have your normal act that you take, it looks like it takes several years to finally start with. You have an opening act, or I guess you call it a welcoming act. What made you decide to add that to Kurios?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things in Kurios that are different that we've never done before. And I think part of that is because Michel Laprise, the director, is such a creative person who's been working at Cirque du Soleil for over 15 years now. He started in the casting department and then eventually made it to special event department, which he was directing shows like the Madonna halftime performance at the Super Bowl, and then went on and directed her MDNA tour show. And he's done very, very different things in this task of organizing special events. So when he got the mandate of directing and writing a big top show, I think he kind of wanted to think outside the box. So he made a list of things. After 30 years, we sort of, although we were not really happy to hear that, we sort of heard sometimes that we were becoming predictable. So Michel really made a list where he put together what we do out of habits and what do we do out of necessity. And the list of things we do out of habits, he really wanted to go a different way.
I've noticed through shows, and it becomes a staple, the net jumping and things, which is amazing. But I've seen that on several shows, and I don't think it's a bad thing that we see it more often than not, because it becomes something that people look forward to, but I can certainly understand maybe they want to try something outside.
Right, and the acronet itself is amazing. I can talk to you a little bit more about that, but before we go into acronet, so the welcoming act. So you're used to seeing at Cirque what we call the awakening, which is the pre-show animation in the house when people are coming in and sitting down in their seats. There's going to be some characters interacting in the audience. But the welcoming act is actually fun because it's on the tent. So as you're walking on site, before you're even entering our big top, you have characters who are standing on top of the tent and actually performing for like 15 minutes to welcome the audience members and kind of put them in the mindset of the show already. Obviously, that is dependent of weather. When it's raining or when it's really cold or too hot, we cannot perform on top of the tent for safety reasons. But you'll be probably lucky enough to see that act when we're going to be in Houston. And then also there's a new thing that we added to this show that we've never done before, which is before the show starts, when people are sitting in the house, we have on stage a rope bridge that is mainly for the purpose of audience members to get to have a sneak peek backstage, cross the rope bridge over the stage, and then sit in their seats again before the show starts. The rope bridge has no other purpose in the show than just for audience members to walk across over the stage, which is giving the audience members the perspective of artists when they're on stage, which is awesome.
Well, that sounds fantastic, because that's the one thing that while you're watching them do their acrobatics and fly through the air, that perspective just for a small glimpse is like, how do they do that? What would it feel like? It's quite amazing. So that's a great element to add to just a pre-show, just to get people warmed up.
Exactly.
When they're planning this entire out, are you also preparing at the same time for it to tour, or do you worry about, let's get the show great in Montreal, and we're going to have it wherever it's going to be, so if it's in Las Vegas, we set it for Las Vegas, but at some point, it's going to go out on the road. Is that something you think of in advance, or do you just try to get the show as great as you can for the venue that you have?
So basically, when a show is created, it's either for a resident venue, or it's for the big top, or it's for arena. But it has to be created thinking that in mind, because let's say in the case of Kurios, we are traveling, so we have to make everything, packable into trailers and then reusable every city that we go to. So when the show is created, obviously you have to think about those restrictions of being in the tent, where we have 4 masts that are holding the tents that are there and that are surrounding our stage. So those are limitations that we have to deal with when we're creating the show, versus a show that's going to go in arena that we have to build and make sure that it's not too heavy so we can hang in most of the ceilings of most of the venues in North America or all around the world. And another thing that has to be taken in consideration is that most of our shows will have a lifetime of maybe 15 to 20 years, and we got to make sure that we're creating them in a time period that's not going to become, aged more quickly, or that's going to, continue and be kind of accurate for 15 to 20 years, and to all those different audiences and cultures that we're going to present it to.
So let's talk about this show, Kurios, which is going to be in Houston starting in April 6th of 2017. And, of course, we're talking about this well in advance because tickets become very scarce fairly quickly, because when Cirque du Soleil comes to town, people can't wait to go see this. So what's the concept and the theme of Kurios?
So the whole storyline of Kurios is taking place in the mid-19th century, which is the Industrial Revolution, the era of all the great inventions, such as electricity bulbs, railroad systems, bicycles, telegrams, name it, gramophones, which was, for Michel Laprise, a very inspirational era, because people believed then that everything was possible. So we're kind of celebrating that era and that feeling of human intelligence and everything is possible. So the story is taking place. We're in the laboratory of this inventor, a little bit of a mad scientist, whose inventions are surrounding the stage, and he's trying to travel to a parallel universe. But things are going wrong, so it's the characters from that parallel universe that are traveling down into his laboratory and bringing life to all his inventions, and kind of turning his world upside down and showing him that reality is relative, time is relative. The show starts at 11:11, it ends at 11:12. Was it just a dream, or did time stop, kind of thing. So it's very different than what you've seen before because we're in a real era. The characters are a little bit more human-inspired than some of the other shows, and their props and their environments is made out of real objects. So you see chairs on stage, you see a hand. Well, we take all of these things in different proportions. So, like a hand is a giant mechanical hand, which is a platform for the contortionist to perform. But it weighs 750 pounds, and it's about 6 meters long, which is one of I think, the nicest props in this show. But it's very steampunk in its aesthetics. Obviously, a Cirque du Soleil way to do steampunk. I think when I first got hired to work on Kurios, I didn't even know what steampunk was, and I went and I looked online for it, and then I realized as we're traveling and presenting the show to different audiences, it's a big thing. The steampunk thing is a big thing. It's like we have people who dress up to come see the show, which is pretty inspiring.
Well, here in Houston right now, the Renaissance Festival, the Texas Renaissance Festival is going on, and steampunk is always a big part of it. So yeah, steampunk is huge. I didn't realize how big it was until I started to go to these conventions and started to see people selling steampunk attire, costumes, pocket watches that made of all these little gears and things. So it is. I saw the picture of the mechanical hand. It looks fantastic. And it looks like it's not only just a platform. It says in the that it might also be at times a character versus just a piece of a prop.
Right. It's seen as a character, but it's also a prop and a platform. It's also used for a hand puppetry act that is filmed and projected live on a hot air balloon. So it's a beautiful piece of the show. I say it's a part of the set, but it's also a character in itself.
Well, let's talk about the performers, and I believe you have one with us. David Locke is available, I'm assuming.
Yes, well, he's just finishing a training on stage right now. I'm asking him to come and meet us in a second.
Okay, well, we'll keep talking. Let me know when he shows up, and we'll get him in right away. So how do you find?
Perfect.
So how do you find performers? What's the audition process like? Because it's not easy to find someone who knows how to ride a BMX bike upside down in a cage and then flip on a net.
Right. So I would say that the casting is a big part of Cirque du Soleil and why we are so rich and have talented people working for us. There's different processes and different ways to become an artist for Cirque du Soleil. Either you'll participate in an audition, because we host auditions in big cities around the world twice a year approximately, or you'll send a video, a demo of what you do, and then you'll get a call from Cirque who would like to come and see you in person or would invite you to Montreal to come and present it in our studios. So we create this database of artists going from contortionists to jugglers to clowns to actors to very small person, a very different range of talents and disciplines. And once we start and create a new show, the director will kind of make a wish list of these are the acts I would like to have in the show, and these are the type of actors or characters I would like to have in the show. And then casting will go and scout through our database of artists and then make some proposition to the director. And if some of these artists we don't have in our database, depending on the requirements, they'll go and scout around the world to find more of what the director would like to have. So, yes, we have a cast in Kurios of 46 artists coming from 15 different nationalities and from different backgrounds. Some of them come from trampolinists or sports and athletes background, and other ones are more actors or come from very traditional circus arts and circus schools. And then you have some artists like David, who we'll speak to very soon, who came from a gymnastic background and also learned how to do many different disciplines in order to become versatile and kind of be a great asset for Cirque du Soleil, because in this show he's jumping on the acronet, which is kind of a massive trampoline, never seen before technology, that required some, yes, trampolinists, but gymnasts or artists that are willing to jump so high in the air that's never been done before, and then bounce on the surface that looks transparent when you're jumping up high and you're looking down. It looks like you're going to land straight on the stage, but the net is still there, and it's quite impressive what he can do.
Oh, it's quite impressive what they can all do, because I've seen them, and I think I've pulled a muscle just watching them. It's such amazing. they really are amazing. So at these auditions, would it be, and not that I'm hoping to ever audition because I'm old and lame, but I can't do any of those flips. But are you looking for people who have truly unique skills that you've not seen before, or are you looking for someone who is versatile and can be taught the stuff that you already know, or are you looking for a combination?
Definitely a combination. Like if I take, for example, the Rolla Bola act in Kurios, which is the aviator character, James, the artist who's from Colombia, who was raised in a circus family, is pretty much the only one in the world who can do what he does. So Michel Laprise saw him once doing some competitions in circus world and decided, I want him. I want his act in our show. So he came and he was added as a part of our show with his act, versus some other artists who are more versatile and can do different things. So like the house troupe, which is the acronet troupe, the guys are also dancing in the opening act of the show. They're acting. They need some skills that are not only acrobatic. They need to have a good presence on stage. They need to act and be able to do all sort of things. So I would say it's a good combination of all. Definitely, if you come from a sport background, then and you are very talented, let's say, and Cirque wants you, they see something in you, you might go through the process of getting acting classes as well to kind of develop that acting skill that you need to have on our stages versus when you're competing in the sport industry.
So how big is the touring company? Because each time I ask a question, it sounds like more and more people are involved, and it sounds like quite an undertaking just to physically move people from city to city. Right.
So we're 116 of us working and traveling with Kurios. And, that's the cast of 46. And then you have all the technicians that are in charge of the show, the technical department, the artistic department, and then you also have the tour services and the company manager, who are the people who are in charge of our lodging, our traveling, our visas. So all of this, and then you also have the front of house team, which is the customer service team. And on top of that, everywhere we go, when we set the tent, we hire about 150 local employees who will be the box office staff, the food and beverage, the merchandising, the ushers, security, our kitchen hires local people as well, and our wardrobe department hires local dressers for the show. So 116 of us traveling, and then with the local people that we hire, we're about 270 people to make this happen every day.
That's amazing. And what have you found to be the toughest logistical challenge? Has it been coordinating all the visas? Is it just the sheer size of some of the props, getting them from town to town? What have you found to be the most challenging thing that you've overcome?
That's a good question. I think each department has their own challenges. I would say definitely for the tour services people, the visas and the lodging and the transportation is very complicated, but also for the technical department is to travel and to set everything and organize everything, every city that we go to, and then to pack it all up and then travel and then reset it again the next city. So there's very different challenges for artistic department is to make sure that the artists stay in shape, they're healthy. What happens if there's injuries? Who are we replacing them with? So there's really, depending on what your department is, you'll have very different challenges.
So the auditions, you look all over the world. You get these 46 folks to do all these amazing stunts. What is the training like? Because you said you have 6 months to prepare. You find the folks and you take 6 months to really learn everything. what is training like on an average day for a performer?
Once the show is ready and opened, every week we will have training on stage. The Acronet, let's say, they have a 1 hour and a half training on stage every week on top of performing all the shows. So they do between 8 to 10 shows a week. They arrive 1 hour to 1 hour and a half before the show starts to do their makeup and warm up and get ready for the show. And then they'll have between 1 or 2 training on stage during the day if needed. But apart from that, they each have their different routines for working out and training. Some of the guys work out after the show because we have a little gym area here under the tent. A lot of them work out after the show, which is surprising. You think they'd be performing for 2 hours, they'll be exhausted. But no, because they want to keep working out and they want to make sure that they don't do this before show and don't tire their muscles too much. Others, like the Acronet guys, they'll find a CrossFit gym every city that we go to, and they go during the day and train at CrossFit. We also hire a local Pilates teacher, and that Pilates teacher will come during the day and give private classes to each of the artists. We also have, with us touring, we have 2 physical therapists who are there to prevent injuries and to react in cases of injuries, but they are following the artists so close, knowing all of their acts by heart and seeing and preventing the artists that would do something different than usual. They will see the show and they'll be like, let's say to the juggler, it'll be like, hey, I saw you do this move today. You never do this usually. Are you compensating? Are you hurt somewhere? And they'll give them treatments, daily and weekly treatments to make sure that their bodies and everything is in top condition.
It's an extremely physical job they're doing. They are truly athletes, regardless if they're dancers or performers or actors. I mean, there's a lot of physicality involved. So injuries are inevitable. I mean, you can prevent them as much as you can, but sometimes it just happens because you're doing so much. When someone does get hurt, how do you work with replacing them, or temporarily, or how do you work with around an injury?
There are different versions of each act. So let's say the Acronet guys. There's 7 of them in the act. You really need to have 6 people around the guy who's flying to push him and bounce him up in the air. So if one of them is injured or sick, he simply has the flu and he cannot come to work because we don't want him to get everybody sick, we will take a guy from another act to bring in and to jump on the net to bring that bounce and that same effect and power. The contortionist, there are 4 girls. Well, we have different 3 girls versions in case one of them needs to have a day or 2 days off to rest her back and her muscles. So there's little different acts and versions like this that we can bring in order to not impair the show if someone is sick or injured. And then we also have backup acts. So within that same cast of 46 artists, some of them are understudies for the main characters or for the comics, and the backup acts are the acts that we would need to replace, like let's say the Rola Bola. I told you he's the only one in the world that can do what he does. So obviously if he's out of the show, then we cannot present his act because no one else can do that. But we have a backup act for that. That maybe you most likely will not see if you come see the show, but sometimes it happens. You could come and see the show and see the backup act in case. Basically, we're keeping the same length and duration of the show. So you'll come and you'll have a 2 hours and 15-minute show, including the intermission. But you might see little different things from one time to another. And then when we're talking about serious injuries that will request either a surgery or a 6-month time out for an artist, then we bring replacement artists. And this is actually the case of David Locke, who was hired initially as a replacement because one of the guys dislocated his shoulder. Ooh. So he started as a replacement artist, and he was trained. So there's an integration and a training part before he actually is able to perform in the show, because he has to learn the different tracks, the dancing part. He has to learn how to make his makeup. He has to get used to being on the net, let's say. And then, so we hired him as a replacement artist. He was with us for 4 or 5 months, and then he went back home to Vegas, and then we just happened to have an opening because Yes, the show has been going on for 2.5 years, but we already have artists that are leaving. They're not renewing their contracts, so we need to replace them. So someone from the Acronet was leaving us, so we called back David and we said, look, you're trained already, you know the act, you're talented, we want you for the long term now, and now he signed with us. So there is, when it's long-term injuries or long-term time out of the show, then we bring replacement artists.
And that database that we talked about earlier must come in very handy at that moment. Do you get people on standby just to let them know when you're traveling that this may happen, or when you're touring, or do they just kind of wait until something happens and then call them up?
So we wait until something goes for the touring shows. It's different for the Vegas shows. The resident shows, they all have on-call artists, because in Vegas there's such a big crowd of artists and Cirque du Soleil acrobats that are there. Like some will be on call for both, like Mystère and Ka, or for different shows. So they have the chance to have on-call artists, which we don't here on tour, because it's always a question of getting visas for that person to work and everything. So we cannot just have on-call people that are standby. But in the meantime, we adapt. If there's something that happens and then quickly we need to replace someone, we adapt the show. We have the different version, and then we'll bring someone new as soon as possible and train that person and make a costume for that person. But once you have a person that is trained, that has a costume that fits him or her, then it's most likely that we're going to call back that same person if we need, because obviously the time that was already invested in training that person is priceless.
Well, one last question before I let you go, and I certainly appreciate your time today. On a personal level, how has Cirque du Soleil affected you as a person, and how have you enjoyed working for such a strange job? I mean, this is one of the most unique places to work, Cirque du Soleil. Not everybody gets a chance to do it, and it seems like it's not only hard and difficult, but also fun. So what has been the best part of Cirque du Soleil for you?
Well, being from Quebec, I guess it was part of my background growing up, already dreaming of working for Cirque du Soleil, because it's such a company that is renowned and that is part of our lives from a very, very young age, being from Quebec. So I guess once I started touring, one thing I didn't know, it was how my life is going to be touring with a show, or how everybody's going to become my friends or my extended family kind of thing. And the privilege of doing what we do, I think, is like, no matter how hard it is to be away from your friends and family or from your home for a long period of time, we are very close, and we manage to bring fantasy and inspiration to about 2,000, 2,600 people every night in the audience. And sometimes I feel like I'm on my computer, and I think it's a rough day and I have no motivation. Then I'll go and sit down in the audience for just one act, and I'll see everybody's faces and smiling and being in awe and clapping. And I think that's the best thing, to reassure you when you're kind of doubting, why did I leave home and why am I touring? I think it's seeing how much joy and happiness we bring to the audiences that we present the show to. And on top of that, traveling and getting to visit the world is awesome. So yes, it's definitely a dream job.
Well, just to remind folks, it's Kurios. It's going to be on the Sam Houston Race Park, April 6th through April 30th, 2017. I and my wife will definitely be there for probably more than one show, so if you want to send comp tickets, go ahead. But otherwise, we will more than happily pay to see the great show that you always put on, no matter where it is. So thank you for your time, Amelie.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Craig. It was a pleasure, and hopefully we'll get to meet once the show arrives in town.
Absolutely. That's the show. Thanks again to Amelie for her time, as well as big thanks to LaTanya for helping get this scheduled. Don't forget to order tickets now at cirquedusoleil.com/curios. Feel free to follow us on Twitter at RealityCheckPod, like the Facebook page, head over to realitycheckpodcast.com to sign up for the newsletter or download the app. Any comments, questions, or guest suggestions should go to Craig at speakercraigprice.com. See you next week.